All right, well, let's begin. Jim, Kolke with Pinnacle is here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Are you kidding me? This is amazing. The man, I'm gonna claim a few things for you. The best eyebrows in inspections, the man that can lift a house by himself, the OG of inspections. That's going to be, I want that to be your announcement that plays every single time we have an inspection. Jim, could you give a little bit of a background on who you are and what you do and what Pinnacle is?
So Pinnacle Property Inspection Services is a full service inspection company. I've been involved with them since 2007. And obviously we're owned by Stacy now, but I'm basically their lead inspector. Been around a little bit, done about 25,000 inspections. Commercial, residential. Yeah, a few of them. But been around a little bit, saw quite a bit. Have I seen everything? No. There's always going to be something new that I'm going to see. But yeah, been around a little bit, obviously. And the eyebrows, if you rub them hard enough, they light up. So I don't use flashlights in crawl spaces. So
I can attest to that. I've seen that in action. Jim, how did you get into inspections?
Crazy thing. I was a plumber. Local 130 plumber, working for a shop, and there was a guy that was on the job site, and he was talking about how he does home inspections. I said, "Wow, really?" And I said, "Yeah, plumbing's a hard job." I was mainly a high-rise plumber, and I was like, "Man, maybe I can find something to do on the side, and maybe on the weekends or something like that."
Yeah.
And anyways, I went to ITT and took a class, and dipped my foot in it a little bit, and it's a hard business to get into. Just being a plumber is not enough. You think it is. I mean, a lot of guys that are trades guys think that they're experts at everything, and unfortunately, you're not, because this is a totally different business because there's so many moving parts in it.
So I gotta say that being an inspector has to be challenging in the sense of how you're perceived, right? Because like you can come through the door and some people see you as a savior and as a protector, and other people see you as a deal killer. So how do you see yourself as part of the transaction?
Well, that's a two-part question. Unfortunately, in my the earlier portion of my career, I was very aggressive because I thought I was the savior. Unfortunately, what happens when you do that, you alienate yourself, not just from, say, a broker or an attorney. You potentially can alienate yourself from a client. And what I mean by that, when you do inspection reports, you can process something not by just saying it, but when you write it and put it in the report. Unfortunately, red is a scary color for everybody. Red means stop, maybe not buy.
Mm-hmm.
So in my early portion of my career, it was a lot of red. Everything was red. And now the older I am now, and the longer I've been in the industry, it's easier to see that 99% of these things that we find at property are common. And the fact that I've done 25,000 inspections, it probably took me to get up to 12,000 inspections to figure that out and say, wow, missing smoke detectors is not a defective issue. It's not something to freak out about, because in essence, it's a problem. You need those, but it's not something to scare somebody. Usually the scary things are things like, broken floor joists, and they're not scary. They could be sister together, but larger things, bowing, structural walls, sloping, stuff like that. But they're fixable. But to understand the two things is hard. And you have to understand that. And so now what I do for Pinnacle, I educate the newer inspectors, because I look at the reports and I'm like, why is this red? Why is this defective? Well, it didn't work. I'm like, yeah, but it's marginal. I said, did you explain it to the customer? Yeah, I did. And I said, okay, well, then you're covered. And you want to make sure that they understand. But education is probably the biggest thing that I think every inspector should be doing for not just the customer, but for the agent, because when you do a deal, the agent has to understand what's going on so they can take care of the customer. And you want to let the attorney know too, because everybody needs to be on the same page.
So whenever I go into a home inspection, the way that I always prep everybody is like, listen, things that are always found. New construction to 100-year-old homes are always things that are found. But we're looking for, in my opinion, three main things: health and safety concerns, and things that are broken, right? Those are, in my opinion, non-negotiables and things that are the easiest you can go to a seller for and state, unless they disclose something was broken, hey, listen, this is actually something that you need to give us money for, right? Or you need to fix. Which kind of goes along what you're saying is that a faulty smoke detector, right? At the end of the day, or a faulty GFCI, or if a GFCI doesn't, like everything that is like within, let's call it south of $100, right? And can be swapped out with maybe Uncle Joe on the weekends, or you can just get a contract to come through. In my opinion, it shouldn't derail you from buying a house that is hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But what are some items that you found that you and people should be watching out for that, in your opinion, is like hands down deal breaker?
So the biggest thing that agents will come up, or a buyer may come up with, is what's the red flags? So red flags are for racing. Those are things that get off the track. So I don't really believe in red flags. I believe that, truthfully, every condo, every house, every building is a good building. It's just there's things that develop. The biggest question that they come up to is cracks in foundation. Oh, it's going to fall down. Listen, every foundation cracks. Let's get this off the table right now. Every foundation will have a crack. If it doesn't, it just didn't happen yet. But
Interesting.
The big things that come up, in my opinion, because this is something that's a big cost, is roofs that are leaking, shingles that are deteriorating. Those are usually big cost items. Sump pumps that aren't working right, or they're leaking in the basement. One of the bigger ones that comes up, and a lot of people don't talk about it, is sewers. I'm a big fan of sewer scoping, and I know a lot of folks don't want to put that initial cost into doing their inspection, because a lot of times it's $350, $250, whatever your inspector will charge you for that. But a lot of times, I would say 80% or 90% of the time, there's no problems with the sewer. Mm-hmm. But you don't know until you do it.
And when there is, that cost is like 20 to 30 G's.
It could be crazy.
Yeah.
And that's where, the whole idea behind inspections is to do your due diligence, to understand what you're really buying. So if you're buying a car, it's the same process. So if I'm buying a used car and it's an expensive car, you want to do a pre-purchase inspection. Mm-hmm. So you're doing the same thing on a house. So you want to make sure you're not missing any of these pertinent parts. A real inspection is to give you sort of an overlay of the entire property, so you understand all the things. You could sort of tell right away if it's, they didn't do enough maintenance on the property. Yeah. But I would say 90% of a home has its maintenance: pitted traps, faulty GFCIs, no GFCIs. I have some vintage properties that will have asbestos in the attics or vermiculite.
Asbestos is tough. We just had that.
Just had that with you, yeah. And it's not the end of the world. So I have clients, well, I'm not going to buy it. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, it's asbestos. I'm like, yeah, but it's fixable. And a lot of times sellers will help you out with that. Yeah. Mold is super common. Every house has got mold. We'll put that on the table right there. Every house has got some kind of mold.
I think it's just one of those words that's gotten a lot worse rep than what it is. Mold is just it's like it's an organism, right? That there's different levels of mold, right? And you just have to know what kind of mold is really bad for your health. But if you do a mold test, you're always going to find some sort of reading of mold,
correct?
Right? Regardless of where you are.
We don't like to even have you do it, be honest with you. And the real reason is that if we find it on a foundation wall, because then you don't have a dehumidifier in the basement, it's super common. We generally recommend to clean it with RMR 86, which is basically rapid mold remover. It's something that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards or something like that, Amazon. But you could correct that yourself, and it's truthfully $20, and you can fix that yourself. Same thing with mold in the attic. Yeah. I have people, I'm not going to buy because of that. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. And if it's small areas, a couple little areas, and you just treat those locations. You could do it yourself, especially if you're doing a deal that there's it's as is, because that's really common in this market now. that you see some of the brokers saying that. It's as is deal. Okay, great. These things are all fixable by a homeowner. It's not a ton of cash.
Right. So let's touch base real quick on that foundation, because you just blew my mind by what you just said, that, you know, an inspector stating that he's not scared of foundational cracks. But is it true that, again, like everything else, there's a level of like from okay, sure, like that's a hairline versus like, okay, this house is going to fall apart. So like when it's horizontal versus vertical, which type of cracks do you need to really watch out for?
So the horizontal can be a bigger problem. And usually with the horizontal crack, the reason why is because it's exposing air to the rebar. And the rebar is what holds the foundation together.
Okay.
And that causes corrosion, failure, and so on. But because you have that, as long as it hasn't changed directions or it has displacement, it's not as big of a deal. Generally in that type of situation, either type of crack, unless we see shifting or step cracking on the masonry, or if there's bowing on the exterior walls, we generally recommend bringing, a foundation expert, whoever your choice is, Atlas, Permaseal, US Waterproofing, and so on. There's a bunch of great guys out there. But usually that would do a polyurethane or epoxy injection. Either one of those would do that. The one that you want to, and I'll touch on this real quickly, is telephone tile, otherwise known as terracotta. That's a bigger animal. We see that a lot in really vintage properties pre-1920.
What is that? Can you go into that a little more?
So if you were to visualize having a flue for your fireplace, the clay flue on the top, that's square, they take that and fold it on its side. They lay it on its side, and they stack that up.
Okay.
And that's basically the foundation. It's made out of terracotta.
Oh, okay.
And so the problem is with that is it can bow. We've seen that, and it has shifted. As long as there are not step cracks in it, then it's usually not a problem.
And step cracks is just like what it sounds. Just a step crack,
yeah. Or we start seeing bowing, because that system can bow.
And bowing means like you see like it's almost like a 2 to 3D dimensional piece of the house, right? Like you can actually see. It's not like a straight line. You can see it starting to bow. Like,
correct.
I'm just making sure that people can understand as we're talking about.
Yeah. It could mean it could shift or bow in, bow out. Usually it bows in because the dirt's pushing the structure in. But if we find that, we do those a lot. We see quite a bit of those up in the North Shore, and that's not a big deal. It's just understanding and explaining to the customer, you do have a terracotta foundation. Well, should I buy it? Sure. This one looks like it's in good shape. The trick behind it is keeping the water away, and that's obviously grading issues around the perimeter by having more dirt around the foundation that pitches the water away from the home. You want to have your gutters, make sure they're cleaned. You want to make sure that your downspouts that are coming down have leaders or extensions on them, or underground leaders that pull the water away from that foundation. But that should be done on any type of foundation. That's traditionally how you get cracks in a concrete foundation too. And then settling. It's very common on big buildings, especially in the city of Chicago, where say we have a 25 by 125, and they have a postage stamp for the dog to urinate in the backyard, or the kids to play in the backyard between the garage.
Either one.
Yeah, either one or both.
Usually both.
There'll generally be a crack in the center of that building. Okay. And the reason why is because we have this long length of concrete pour, and there's no expansion joint. It's not required. So it's going to make its own. Concrete makes its own cracks. If you look at a sidewalk or a garage slab, if you don't cut a quadrant cut in a garage, it's going to crack itself. You'll see it'll make its own crack. And that's common. So by finding that crack, that's why I'm not freaked out by a crack in the foundation. It's not a big deal. If the basement's unfinished, it's really not a big deal. And then if it is finished, we just write there's a crack there, recommend review with the seller, find out if they did any repairs before that. The good news is if you're buying a newer property, what I mean by newer, anything 2005 and newer, generally they have a vapor barrier inside. So meaning they have plastic vapor barrier or dimple board that will take any water that were to find its way in and direct it down to the sump pump.
Okay.
So then it's really not a big deal because it's not structurally unsound. It's just a crack.
Man, there's just like so much stuff that, as you know, now I know, right? Because I've been doing this for so long, and like the more you see, the more you know.
Sure.
And that's, what an experienced inspector, experienced broker, right? People come in and they're like, well, I don't even know what to look out for. I'm like, well, you look for, is this the house you want to live in? I look for, is this a good investment? Meaning I look for the things that I know that you need to look out for, things that are broken or whatever, right? But vapor barriers, all of that stuff, right? It's just one of those things that I wish they would teach you more of in real estate school, right? Because at the end of the day, what is my job? My job is to, yes, it's to sell real estate, but in my opinion, is to protect the interests of my clients, which means when they buy something, I'm seeing it as an investment, and you're going to make money on the back end when you come to me to sell. But it's by watching out for, is the roof in good shape? Is the foundation okay? Like, is there any major ticket item that's going to be coming up in your length of ownership of, let's call it average of 5 to 7 years, that 25 to 50K in profit that you were going to see if nothing would happen would go away because you have all of these expenses that are coming up, right? So I wish that people were more responsible when it came to understanding how important our position is in this piece, because a lot of brokers, right, they don't do a ton of business, and they get nervous during the inspection because they're like, I hope nothing is found because I really need this deal. And that's a really dangerous mindset to have, right? Because at the end of the day, like, I'm sure you've made a lot of brokers unhappy by just doing your job.
Yeah.
By just doing your job,
Sure.
right? And it's really not fair, because that's literally what you're there for. It's to protect the interest of the buyer. Now, 25,000 inspections. You're a man of good stories. Tell me a really interesting, funny, or incredible story of a house in in the 25,000 inspection. Anything interesting.
Well, I'll give you the worst one first.
Oh, that's where I want to start.
So I show up to an inspection in the city, I don't want to say the neighborhood, with balloon built structures. Basically what that means, it's vintage. And instead of doing what's called platform build, so the new way we build now is you have a foundation, then you have 2x6 running up to a platform, and then you go up to the next floor and so on. This way, they basically run the 2x4 all the way up, and then they attach to it. So there is no platform. It's just the way it was built. The 2x10 is sitting. There's no ledger on it. So what ends up happening, it can bow really easy.
Okay.
So I show up to the house. I generally show up 15 minutes to a half an hour early, reasoning we want to be prepared to start educating the customer and the agent of what they're buying. So I get there, and the house looks like it's leaning to the right, the whole house, both sides. So, I get there, and
looks like a leaning tower of Pisa.
All right. I get a 6 foot level out, which does nothing, but sort of gives us an idea of what we've got. And we've got a 4-inch run.
Okay.
By 6 feet. So this thing's massively shifting. So, it probably was a great deal, but, I had to grab the agent right away and say, listen, because he got there early, and I'm like, you may want to look at this. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, the whole building's shifting, and I want you to know this before I tell your client, because they weren't there yet. He said, okay, but it looks pretty good. I'm like, okay. I says, I don't like to use the word structural engineer, but I have to tap out of this. He's like, why? I'm like, because it's not sound. So that was that's probably one of the scariest ones I've had, because they still thought it was good.
Like it was scary because the agent was like, well, is it really that bad? It's like, look at it.
Yeah.
Just look at it.
I don't feel safe, and obviously that's his business. If he feels safe putting his client in there, that's up to him.
Yeah, which is damn unfortunate.
The funniest is during the correction, the recession, we did a lot of foreclosures, a ton of them. And most of the time, agent would come, unlock the door, and go to Starbucks or whatever. And I'm out in Naperville, and doing the whole inspection. Nobody's there. They turned the water on, the bank did, and it's a big house. And I didn't see any openings in the roof, so I thought I was safe. I go into the attic, and it's a big attic, and I hear moving around, stuff happening.
Oh, man.
And I assume that's the agent. So I'm yelling down, is he there? And it wasn't the agent. In fact, it was 2 baby raccoons.
Okay.
So there's never only baby raccoons. I don't know if you know about how raccoons work. They're not by themselves.
There's like Mama Raccoon?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
Mama Raccoon decided that I was there in her space next to her baby raccoons, and she decided that she wanted to get me.
Okay.
So I'm trying to run
No.
in an attic that doesn't have a floor, and she was on my backside. So I jumped out the hole and landed on the ladder, and I don't know how I didn't break anything. But
Oh
I
my
did.
God.
So yeah, but it was funny now, not then.
My
So yeah,
God, man.
that's some crazy stuff. Yeah.
No, man. And every single time I see you at an inspection, there's always like some fun new story that you got. That's one of the best things about our jobs, right? Like we're just always in a new situation, and it's not always fun, right? Here or there, but like I'm always entertained. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you want to have, the whole idea behind this business, in my opinion, is to meet new people, to help people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't want the help. Sometimes they're okay with you just doing your job and putting it on paper, which is fine too. But at the end of the day, you have a fiduciary responsibility.
You would think.
And
required.
To everybody.
Yeah, right.
Not just the customer, to the brokers, to the attorneys, to everybody, because in essence, we consider ourselves just team members.
Yeah.
Or we want to be an important part of the transaction. So we have to act professional. So you have to be very professional. And sometimes in our industry, it gets a little hairy.
It's high emotion.
Yeah,
it's
a lot of emotion.
Yeah, lots of emotions buying houses.
houses.
So wanted to also kind of take a step towards the maintenance front, right? So fall is here, it's coming up. I think that it's really important for people that own homes to know how to do proper maintenance and do things to keep the longevity of just their houses in general.
Sure.
These things are like, houses, they need love too, right? They're not just going to like clean their own filters. They're not going to clean out the gutters or whatever. So what do you see as like for your own home ownership, right? What do you do in the fall to ensure that maintenance is done? And what do you think anybody listening here can be like, all right, I own a home. What are the top 5 or whatever things that I should consider to do to ensure that I'm ready for winter?
Well, the first thing is you want to make sure, and that may be after fall or at the end of fall, you want to make sure your gutters are definitely cleaned.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing, because otherwise you're going to have ice damming issues that'll track inside your walls, especially we get our heavy snows here in Chicago. So that's very important. Next thing would be if you have regular gate hose bibs versus antifreeze, the ones that will have
You're talking about for the outdoor faucets. Faucets. So it's the ones that the people don't have. Then what happens is that the water gets trapped and it explodes when it's
That's
right.
right. Yep. So generally, if you can winterize those, you can.
And it's not that expensive either. Like,
no,
it's not expensive to fix. To replace out, it's really expensive to fix if you don't.
If it breaks, because you got to shut the water down. You got damage in your basement and so on. So they make covers that'll slide over those, that'll insulate them. So that's a great option too.
Okay.
Or you can winterize those. So those two things are big for me. Going into fall, you want to make sure your sump pump's in good shape. If you have a battery backup on it, you want to make sure the battery's fresh or it's been taken care of. You don't want that sump pump failing, especially if we get heavy rains here in the fall. And the other thing is you want to make sure if you have basement egress, the drains are cleared, because you have leaves that'll hit that in the basement. It'll come right inside your back door. So you want to make sure those are all protected. If you have a fireplace, you want to make sure that if you do have a cap on there, the cap's still intact. We are part of the Windy City, very windy here. A lot of those caps will blow off. And the reason why is you don't want any animals crawling in there.
Sure.
Then you turn a fire on and then you got a dead animal in there or a live one that you would have a bigger problem.
God, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So
so gross.
Yeah. So you definitely don't want to deal with that.
Not only cooking chicken that night.
No chicken. No chicken for sure in there. And you don't want bat or raccoon or squirrel or any of that other stuff. Thanks. But those are probably my biggest takeoffs. The outlets are in our inspection. We give every customer a homeowner's handbook.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah, so that's really nice. We do that just to try to educate the clients. But in that book, it's got a timeline of life expectancy for furnaces, air conditioners, water heaters, and so on. And then the next page will have things to do in the spring, fall, winter, and annually.
Do you think, on a side note, if somebody, let's say, is watching this and is like, hey, you know what, that's awesome, I would like some sort of handout or some sort of, do you guys have something like PDF if somebody emails me that we can send
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching this and it's something that you would like from a professional inspection company, just to know maintenance wise, they have an amazing booklet and handout. So just send a message our way, comment, and I'll get that right over to you. Yeah,
that's not a problem at all. In fact, that's an awesome thing to give to any buyer, really.
True.
Or even homeowner. And the reason why is a lot of people don't know. They're not educated on it, or they're not at the inspection, when it's being performed, or they just don't know. They just don't know. A lot of folks buy homes, condos, and so on without inspections, which is it's common and it's okay.
Is it really?
It is common. You do hear folks doing it, and they're like, hey, I had to buy it this way because it was, it's the way it was structured.
Waived my inspection or whatever.
Yeah, I had to waive that.
That was a lot during COVID, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when it was like inventory is crazy, all that stuff. Yeah.
They just had no choice to do that. And that's okay. But, at the end of the day, if we could help somebody, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Before we leave that conversation, the furnaces definitely have to be serviced. And you want to get those serviced. Obviously, changing the filters, we recommend every quarter. If you have pets, every month.
For filters,
for your furnace.
The grading on it, right? A lot of people are like, I need the 10 out of 10. But isn't it better to have like the 2 out of 10 so that it allows the filter to breathe?
Yeah.
The furnace to breathe, right?
Yeah. They make a blue one. It's it looks like mesh. Mm-hmm. It matters. So it matters if you keep the windows open. So if you're a window open person, then you may want the pleated because you're going to be getting a lot of dust and all that coming in. If you have
pleated
pets,
means like the higher rating.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you have pets, the hair is going to come into it. So especially returns. I'm a big fan of cleaning ducts on any transaction. So if you're buying a property, clean the ducts because you don't want to be, you want your own filth, your own dust.
It gives you the, your own juju.
It's
like,
your own stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, your own stuff.
My wife's Nicaraguan, so she always, she does it. I always forget she lights the smelly, it's not wood, but it's like, it basically like, creates this really nice, like almost like churchy smell in the house.
Sure.
And then you open the door and it or the window and it basically gets all of the bad juju out.
Exactly.
So if you don't have a Nicaraguan wife, next step is to do the duct cleaning.
Yeah, you definitely do the duct cleaning, and then obviously the filters, like we were chatting about, the mesh ones are better. They're going to save your blower because your blower is going to work harder to pull that air, and if it can't get the air, it's going to pull hard.
Yeah.
And you may not get as good a flow into especially if it's a second floor area off one furnace.
And a lot of furnace maintenance companies, they give you like plans where it's like, listen, you pay this on an annual or monthly basis. It's a much smaller amount, and then you get 2 free maintenance plans in the fall, and then because the best time to do it is fall and spring, right? Like
correct.
That's the time to clean your furnaces out, which is one of the most expensive pieces of mechanics you have in the home. So it's really a good idea to maintain it. And the average lifespan is what, like 10 to 12 years?
So generally furnace, you get 15 to 20. If you really maintain it, you could even get longer.
Right.
ACs generally last a little less. And the reasoning is because it's exterior. And the other thing is people forget about it. So they don't clean the condenser on the exterior. So that's when they take the whole shroud off. Right. They have to take all the dust and all the tree foliage off of it, the dogwood and so on. So by cleaning that, you extend the lifespan of it because it has a compressor on the inside. The humidifier also, you want to change that filter at least once a year. Make sure the water works on them. Yeah. So not everybody likes to run those. So it's okay. Most of the inspections that we do, I would say 80 to 90% humidifiers don't work. We see that all the time. And usually it's the solenoid that's stuck in the housing. So that can be loosened up by a heating guy or yourself with a screwdriver. You tap it a couple times and it'll loosen up. But I mean, there's always YouTube is amazing, so you can find a lot of stuff.
Uncle Joe on YouTube.
Uncle Joe on YouTube.
Always see that shit, man.
Yep.
So for the brokers that are listening and I want to get better at representing their clients, right? Are there some tools that you would recommend that they have on hand so that during walkthroughs, whatever, it's just quick and easy to assist client? Like for example, like I always have a digital measuring tape on me, right? Where it's like, because people are like, how big is this room, right? Boom, boom, it's 10 by 11, right? Is there anything or any tools, resources that you think every broker should have in their toolkit whenever they go out and show properties? So
a lot of properties people go to, they will see a watermark on a ceiling.
Right.
And they're like, well, where do you think that's coming from? Well, they don't know. So they're trying to, sell this property.
Yeah.
And they call the agent. Do you know anything about this? And they make a little attachment for iPhone and Android that FLIR makes that attaches to your phone.
Okay.
And then you could actually download the app. I don't even think you need to do it. It works with your camera on your phone, and it turns it into a thermal imager.
Really?
And you could literally take that and shoot photos of it and see if it's active. And then you go look upstairs and make sure, that it's not.
And if it's like blue or dark blue, it's active, right?
Outlet tester, I some agents like to carry those, and brokers are like, hey, these are things that are important to me. So you bring it, that's fine. But you're going to test all these outlets. It's GFCI. It's, $10. It's not crazy. And a flashlight, a little flashlight, or you can use your iPhone one. Sometimes the iPhone flashlight's not good enough, so you bring a smaller mag light, and that works great. But I don't think you need a ton, because in essence, I know this is going to sound horrible, but brokers are taking orders from a customer. I want a 3-bedroom.
Oh, I tell my clients all the time. I always sign off. I have my marching orders. Thank you. I'm on it.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you want, and you're telling me the neighborhood you want to live in, you want this many garage, you want a little yard for Billy or Susie and Benji the dog to go play in. These are the things that you want. I need a 2-car garage, and this all checks every check mark that I need in my list. Then I would say, it's great that the broker is looking for that.
Yeah.
But the relationship with the inspection company is pretty important, because they really are there to educate not just the brokers, but to help the client understand what it is. And it's the way it's delivered. I hate to say that. A lot of times, I have some folks, they'll say you're too laid back, or some will say you're too aggressive. I'm like, well, I'm trying to find that fine line.
Yeah.
But the older I get, the more laid back I am. And they're like, well, this is a big deal. I'm like, they're blinds. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Blinds aren't the end of the world, or a GFCI. And they're like,
which at the end of the day, I appreciate, right? Because so the way that I always phrase you guys as Pinnacle, as our go-to inspectors at Vesta, is you guys are my insurance policy, right? I tell it to my clients all the time. And you're my insurance policy, because I'm not going to get a call from my client 2 days after closing being like, why didn't you, my window is leaking, or is actively leaking, or whatever, and it's like, why didn't you tell me this? It's happened to me before with my past inspectors, for sure, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, my advancement as a broker also advanced my knowledge on the importance of the resources that I offer my clients, right? It's not about getting the deal done. It's about having happy clients. And to keep happy clients, it's not just doing an amazing job to get them the deal and finish the job. And my job isn't done when I collect my check at closing table. It's a continuous relationship, because I tell my clients is like, my goal is to make you money when I sell this place for you. So that means that we got to buy right, and it's got to maintain itself right, so that when you come to me in 3, 4, 5 years, I'm giving you a number and you're really excited about it, because now you've made money. And that's the whole idea of real estate, right? I think just people get lost in understanding that I need this deal to be done, and they don't see you guys they see you as a step to getting their check. They don't see you as a piece of the full lifeline of a relationship. And I think like that is the most important thing. And if somebody's looking to buy and they're watching this, I think it's so important that you're working with representation that understands the importance of what you're actually doing. A lot of people say this is and it is the biggest purchase, the most amount of money they'll ever spend their entire life, right? It's a massive statement. You're part of one of the biggest, most important, if not the most important financial decisions someone's going to make in their lifetime, right? Protect that. Help them protect that. And you'll earn a client, a friend, a referral partner for the rest of their life if you just do this one step. Now, if you don't see it like that, right, then you'll make your money or whatever, but you're not going to grow as a realtor if you don't see it that way. That's the only way we've been able to grow as an independent brokerage, by having that mindset.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with you 1,000,000%. But yeah. I think the relationship, it's hard. It's hard for some brokers and some inspection companies, because we've hired inspectors that came from other shops and they were under the mindset it was adversarial. So they were under the mindset that, well, the client didn't say this. Well, to talk to you, well, I can't talk to the realtor. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, because my client. I'm like, listen, I go, they're here now. Let's get the deal done. Right. So generally, I would say you have to work as a team. It doesn't matter if you're the buying agent or listing agent or broker. Yeah. You want to make sure that you work together as a team, because at the end of the day, it's a team transaction.
Right.
Sometimes we'll get that the listing broker will be upset.
Yeah, right.
But at the end of the day, it's coming out.
Right.
It's coming out of the wash.
You're
So
right.
let's just hit it head on. There's a problem. Let's figure it out together. This is the time that you could tell a professional really quick.
Yeah, right.
Because a buying agent, they're usually fine. And then, because they want to make sure that their client's getting what they want. And if you have a listing broker that's confrontational about something, and they're like, listen, I'm here to tell you, to help you.
Right.
I'm going to tell you what's wrong, and let's work it out together. Because at the end of the day, the buyer is still ready to buy. The buyer of the property wants to buy, and they're watching the behavior of the selling agent, selling broker, because they're like, okay, well, it's not a big deal. Many times we find mold and attic, and before I could finish saying it, the listing broker is like, yeah, don't worry about it. I've already called my client. We're going to be fixing that for you. It's going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
The buyer automatically feels engaged and elated that now that's not a problem.
People forget, because of the high emotional stake of these transactions, one wrong look, one wrong statement, one wrong reaction can sour the entire deal.
Correct.
Because buyers are so quick to distrust, as they should be. I understand. Like,
Sure.
they're so nervous, right? Because of that financial statement I made, where it's the biggest purchase of their life. Like, what are they hiding? It's like how quickly that statement comes out in the most minuscule of altercations in a deal. As a listing broker, I know that. So I am literally on tiptoes, and like you said, serving the buyer, because my job is to close the deal for my seller, right?
Right.
That's only going to happen if the buyer closes. And if the buyer walks away because of how I'm acting, I'm now missing on representing the seller properly.
Right.
And I think a lot of brokers forget that. Okay, so two last things before we finish up here is radon, right? That is something, it's a gas that it's kind of like just, could you just explain it? And then where and how people and why people should be testing for it?
So radon gas comes from uranium, which is basically from deep in the earth. So that's the granite that supports our structure. Basically, what we're on is basically from the dirt. Generally, how we get it, doesn't matter if you have a slab on grade, crawl space, or basement. It comes from any openings. So if you have a floor drain, a sump pump, any cracks around the perimeter where the foundation meets the slab, those areas will emulate. I'm not a doctor, but I'll play one for today. It's the second largest reason for lung cancer.
Okay.
And that's not me, that's EPA.gov, next to cigarettes. But usually that's rectifiable. We could test for it. We use what's called CRMs, continual radon monitors, and we leave them in a property for 48 hours. It could be left longer, but 48 hours is the minimum. We're looking for readings of above 4.0 picocurie. So 4.0 and higher, we would recommend a mitigation systems. Anything below 3.9 or less, it's not a big deal.
And the mitigation system's like what, $1,500, $2,000?
Exactly.
So it's not like terrible, but again, protect your family.
Correct.
So when somebody does an inspection, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, radon is more so prevalent in the suburbs than the city.
Correct.
Why?
Couple reasons. One, not as many people test in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So
Fair.
so you go online and
Because of the statement I just said.
Correct.
Because people are just like, I don't know, but I'm just going to state this.
So we'll do transactions, and we offer all the services, and the client says, I'm not doing radon. My agent said there's no radon in Chicago. And so we don't say anything because we're McDonald's. You walk in and I want a Big Mac. Okay. We sell everything.
Right.
We sell chicken tenders.
Yeah,
we sell everything.
Everything, yeah.
But we're not telling you what to eat. So that's not what we're supposed to do. In this case, they say no. And in the office, we're like, man, that's sort of a rough statement, but I probably wouldn't have did that because the liability is through the roof.
Sure,
Why didn't you do a radon test and somebody gets sick, or they sell the property, comes up 4.14 picocurie. Now the client's upset. So, we never recommend to do any test. We offer it.
Got it.
It comes in our emails, and if the client asks for it, then we'll give it to them. A lot of the brokers will say, listen, you may want to do a sewer scope. Sewer scoping didn't happen in 2010. I'll touch that real quick. Everybody used to say I was a deal killer because I would recommend sewer scoping. And how I got into doing sewer scoping, I'm a plumber by trade. It's always something that I was worried about. I see a lot of trees, especially silver maples or willows in front of a yard. So I figured a sewer is going to be, in trouble. I did an inspection in Glenview, and I get a call about 2 months after they did an inspection that their basement got sewer backup, and there was no rain. And that meant that the sewer was blocked. So the client was upset at me, and, rightfully so. I said, but we didn't scope the sewer. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm going to learn from that. And from that point on, we offered sewer scoping, and we recommend the clients to do it. But if they want to, we always put it in the report. Then if you have a gravity-driven sewer, especially vintage properties, anything before 1977, you don't have an ejector pit. But I'm sorry, I took you on a sidebar there. But the radon, I don't know anybody that's ever died of it.
Okay.
But state of Illinois got involved and made it something that was a disclosure issue along with lead. So, some folks talk about it, some recommend it. Chicago generally has a lower level. Truthfully, the western suburbs, LaGrange, Hinsdale, Clarendon Hills, they generally have higher levels. Naperville's got higher levels.
Okay.
Something with the
Just the earth,
the structural, of the earth. Yeah, that's why they have higher levels.
So when somebody is thinking about doing an inspection or whatnot, what are some do you, if it was you, right, and you're buying a house, would you just do the full scope gamut of everything, right? Now, if it's a condo, obviously you're not going to do a sewer scope. There's no sewer, right? But if there's a sewer, if there's a basement, typically good idea to do radon, good idea to do sewer scope. I mean, you're buying a multi-$100,000 home. Like, make sure to spend a few extra coin, some extra coin, because eventually, if something's broken, you're gonna have to fix it anyways.
Yeah. Sometimes if there's a radon mitigation system, find out when it was installed, if it was only 4 or 5 years ago, then you could test if you want. But if the manometer is the meter on the piping, if it's intact, then I would say no, you don't need to do it. The sewer scoping, it's really a gamble. Yeah. If you don't mind spending a few bucks on that, it's definitely worth it. With our company, you get a video with it. It comes with the video. It tells you exactly where it is, so you know exactly it's clear. If you don't do it and you have a cracked sewer, you may have a problem. The thermal imaging comes free with us. Yeah. And we use drones, as you know. Yeah. So we use all that equipment for the customer. If you use any inspection company, you really want to be using thermal imagers. Yeah. It's really sort of a must.
So that's my finishing question is, if somebody is just got under contract, when they're shopping for an inspection company, what are the most important things they should be either asking themselves to look into, or when they do talk to an inspection company, how do you know that it's the right inspection company to use for the house that you're buying?
So common tools that you should be using. If they show up and there's and they come in a little car, that means they don't have a big ladder on the truck. Okay. So that means they can't get on that roof. So and then you ask if they're not using a drone, that means that roof is not going to be inspected. That they're going to write in there, recommend roofing company review your roof. So why are you paying them? Right. So for sure that's where you start. Radon or thermal imaging is definitely something that.
And those aren't cheap. Those are but like $500 to $600 for you to have the tool.
5,000. Yeah. 5,000 per camera.
Oh my God.
So, we may be a little bit more expensive than some of our competitors, but
you get a bigger picture.
Right. Where the thermal imaging is not. When I started doing thermal imaging, when I got interested in 2009, I made the investment in one camera, and I think we have 20 cameras. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure. I talked to the attorney. He's like, well, I could charge $500. Back then it was $500 to get, infrared pictures. And he says, if you do that, you open yourself up to liability. You have the potential. And I'm like, you know what? I don't even care about that part. I want to give a great product. Yeah. I don't want to give a junk product. So, so I'm just going to give it to everybody. That's it. So for sure, the opportunity to have that with that. And you want to talk to at least the inspection company and find out, what kind of report are you going to get? How many photos are they going to shoot for you? We hire inspectors from other states, and from other inspection companies. And they're like, yeah, I shot 80 pictures. I'm like, for just the roof, or would you shoot it for? And they're like, no, for the whole inspection. I'm like, okay. Traditionally, for us, we want to shoot anywhere between, in a condo, anywhere between 300, including the thermal imaging and drone, all the way up to 1,000 photos, depending on how big the house is.
You're literally running around, but then when I get your report, it's got minimum 50 pages, usually like around 70 to 100.
Sure.
And every single item has a photo,
Right.
has a reference point, has an explanation, and then it makes it so much easier for me to negotiate on for behalf of my buyer, because I'm like, X, Y, and Z needs to be done. These are legit items, right? And by the way, there was 150 other items we're not bringing up. Well, send me the report. I'm like, okay, send it. And then boom, like that. It's not even an argument.
Right. Well, the other thing with the photos, I'll be honest with you, with the ceiling photos and stuff like that, and the carpet photos, a lot of the inspectors are like, this is crazy. Why are you doing this? And I said, listen, what do you think they use the report for? And I'm like, well, they're using it to negotiate. I said, okay. And what do you think happens when they do the walkthrough? Did somebody live there? And they said, yeah. I said, the carpet looked good when they lived there? And they says, yeah, it was fine. And then they walk through and it's stained, or the floor is covered with a rug.
Yep.
And there's damage. So now
it's a reference
during
point.
the walkthrough, the client has a valid point and say, listen, the floor was covered with this rug and there's burn marks, there's damage, there's missing boards or whatever. And that could still be negotiated at the closing table for you. So there's a couple points with all the photos, and I call it my craziness leads to something really good.
Yeah.
And that's why I like all the photos. That's what I would want.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when I was doing the inspections, I was flipping properties myself, and I would do that for myself. So I'd want that. I would only want to do for myself, for you.
That's fair.
That's only fair.
So like thermal engine cameras, big ladders, drones, like really detailed reports. I mean, I think like if you just stick to those 4 points, everything else should pretty much fall into the fold, because they're like big ticket items that cost the inspector a lot of money and or time or knowledge to get there. So I think that if somebody does reference an inspection company and they ask those questions and it's a yes, 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 they should feel pretty comfortable. And obviously reviews and things like that, you can check online.
Right. And you'll know right away. I mean, you got the younger guys, because I was that guy, you come in and think you have an S on your chest, and you have to come with a good attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the end of the day. Even when we're interviewing new inspectors, they have to have a good attitude and be kind and understanding, even though some days you're going to get a little something because the emotions run high. So you have to be understanding and patient. So that's a huge thing in this industry. And I find that more with the older inspectors.
Gotcha.
Because they're able to be patient, maybe having grandchildren, so the grandchildren act up. So they have clients that, are highly emotional like grandchildren. So,
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, I want to just say, so Vesta Preferred Inspectors is with Pinnacle. You guys do an incredible job. I've gone through a lot of different inspection companies, and you guys are just the most thorough, have the best tools, resources, and my clients are just consistently happy. And you also just open up your cell phone to them and be like, hey, your job, you realize it doesn't end right at the inspection. You're like, give me a call if you have any questions. My clients love that. It's just like, I have this guy that is open to chatting and continuing this relationship, which to me, it's all about the relationship. It's not just about the end all be all. So I thank you for your service and your help. My clients thank you. And thank you for doing this today.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And one of the best agents in the industry, super friendly, super kind, and a great person overall.
Keep going. All right, Jim, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for watching.